Happy holidays, everyone. Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Licorice Pizza, the newest film from director Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit the notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like any of these videos, awesome. Hit that like button as well as commenting below on any video you watch, including this one. So Licorice Pizza is, of course, the newest film from Paul Thomas Anderson. It's a film that stars Alana, Haim, and Cooper Hoffman as Alana and Gary. And in essence, it's a film that kind of follows these two individuals who are very opposite of one another. Gary's a somewhat child successful actor who knows a lot of people in Hollywood and tries to, start his own businesses and very much a schemer and stuff like that. And then we have Alana, who is very much a very impressionable but somewhat older individual than Gary, but seems to have lost their way. She's like a lot of people who in their early 20s who just don't really know what they want. And somehow these two, even though they're on opposite sides of the spectrum, somehow find a connection with one another and kind of, navigate this world that is very much, bigger than them, is very much, in odds of one another and so on and so forth. And they just kind of, become this kind of interesting dynamic of a yin and yang scenario. And then on top of that, you have like Penn, who comes into the mix as a famous actor. You have of course Bradley Cooper comes in as a famous director, and so on and so forth. So it's in essence a opposites attract type of film. It's very much a first love type story because they don't really have never had a real relationship. And it's also about what a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson films are about, which is very much the human condition, the human identity. How do we connect in the world that is very much out to separate and so on and so forth, and how these individuals kind of work well with one another. And that's what's really interesting about a director like Paul Thomas Anderson, is the way he writes characters and the way he places his characters. They're not what I would consider the most likable of individuals. They're kind of self-righteous in a lot of aspects, and the way they are written, it gets to a point where you're kind of questioning whether you want to root for these individuals, whether they have, the respect that they deserve by the end of the movie. But what is really fascinating is they're so three-dimensional and so kind of charismatic that you almost feel like you have to root for him because it's just the way he writes and the way he directs. But he also likes to go to a very fantastical, very kind of meta approach when he writes his stories. For instance, when we do like There Will Be Blood, it's about, greed and how we kind of screw each other over. And there's more to it than that. Magnolia is about how our place in the world and how we kind of connect with one another. But they're so despicable in that movie that it kind of makes it in the same realm as something like this. Punch Drunk Love is about an individual that is being beaten down by his family, and he finds lovelorn and kind of, heart relationship with, the woman in the movie. And that's what this movie is doing. It's about kind of despicable individuals who are very charismatic and very three-dimensional in their own right, that you almost have to kind of love them for what they are. But what this movie does that I don't like, and when it comes to like the self-indulgent stuff, is just how he places his characters, how he tries to make it too fantastical and too self-righteous. And by the time this movie concludes, there's nobody that you really care about. There's nobody you really respect. I think the Alana character doesn't learn any lessons in this movie, even though she's kind of thrown around like, a piñata doll, like beaten around and stuff like that. And I'm not saying she's like raped or anything like that in this movie, but she's just kind of beaten down as a human being by, of course, the Gary character. And I don't feel that her character gets any real interesting conclusion to her character, except that she somehow has a connection to Gary. And then Gary's character, which Cooper Hoffman's great in this movie, as well as Alana Haim, they're both great in this movie, but he's such a despicable character. He's such a douchebag in a lot of respects. I have no kind of love for him at all. I don't understand the relationship of the two. I don't understand why they like each other. Maybe they just find this kind of weird connection with one another. But I just felt that he's a kid that just kind of uses people, and then somehow they have a connection at the end. It really is bothersome. It happened in the Master, where somehow you have to like love this character that Joaquin Phoenix is playing. I didn't find that really that interesting. And then you're throwing Penn into the mix, who plays this like older actor. You're throwing Tom Waits into the mix. You're throwing in, of course, Bradley Cooper. But I feel that this movie is so self-indulgent and so kind of up its own butt that even with this kind of interesting concept of trying to take place in a world that is very like our own, just very all over the place, and just kind of, it makes you makes your like head explode. I just don't think it works. I really don't. I think this is one of the more kind of confusing and convoluted and kind of frustrating Paul Thomas Anderson films. I think the soundtrack is great, and like I said, the cinematography is great as it always is. But I think there is just not enough reining in of Paul Thomas Anderson himself, which he's earned the respect to not can do whatever he wants. But I think what made like stuff like, you know, There Will Be Blood and Magnolia so great is even though those characters were they're very despicable characters, there's something magnetic about it. There's something magnetic about the storytelling that just doesn't feel like it's here. And that's kind of a shame. It really is, because I was really looking forward to this film. It was in my most anticipated list of the year. But overall, I just didn't really care for this movie, and I thought, you know, just the way the characters are placed and way they throw themselves around, you know, some of the supporting characters are just kind of tossed in there for whatever it's worth, and just kind of not really used to the full ability. And I think in the end, I just think this is one more of a misstep than it is a success for when it comes to Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, with that said, if you like stuff like The Master, you like stuff, you know, that, you know, Phantom Thread and stuff like that, I think you will get something out of this. But I think Punch Drunk Love does this kind of concept a little bit better, it's a little bit shorter, and is a little more tight when it comes to the script telling and when it comes to the love and romantic aspects of the, you know, what Paul Thomas Anderson is known for doing. But overall, I was not a huge fan of this movie. I was a little disappointed, and it's not the worst Paul Thomas Anderson's ever done. It's definitely not his best. So overall, it was just a disappointment. But anyways, that'll do it. That'll be my take on Licorice Pizza. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below, what did you think of this movie? What's your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie? All that good stuff. But once again, happy holidays. And as always, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming in next. If you like these videos, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.